don't look back in anger.
Yeah.
That person who started singing that song. No, we're angry.
Yeah.
I don't want to not look back in anger. I am angry about what's happening, and a lot of people are really angry about what's happening. Europe is starting to get angry.
Welcome to the Saturday Night Showdown. Now, Tony Blair pontificated on misinformation this week, hinting that Twitter, or X as it's called now, should be banned because people share fake news on it. It's a bit rich to be lectured on the harms of misinformation by a man who invaded Iraq based on Alistair Campbell's dodgy dossier. It's like getting babysitting advice from Jimmy Savile. Instead of banning Twitter, maybe we should ban Alistair Campbell to stop dangerous misinformation. I've seen some dodgy stuff on Twitter, but I've never seen a tweet lead to cruise missiles raining down on Iraqi weddings. Have a look at this.
Do you foresee a point in the not-too-distant future where other countries are going to have to follow Brazil's lead and take actual action against platform owners for the dissemination of disinformation?
Well, I'd certainly see a position where the world's going to have to come together and agree some rules around social media platforms.
Now, I know that it looks like Tony Blair is doing outreach work with alcoholics, but that was in fact left-wing journalist James O'Brien. This is a humiliation ritual for Blair. He used to have status. He used to hobnob with the Epstein Island client list. And now he's blabbering his increasingly unhinged authoritarianism to a greasy, dishevelled demagogue on a radio station. Twitter has been threatened by the European Union and banned completely in Brazil. This is hailed by the left as preserving democracy by stopping misinformation and stopping the far right. But in reality, it's a cover for the suppression of political opponents. X was taken down in Brazil when Elon Musk refused to comply with dodgy court orders to remove accounts, including members of Brazil's Congress, who are in opposition to the ruling far-left party. It would be like Keir Starmer removing the Tories from Twitter. Actually, I probably shouldn't give Keir Starmer any ideas. The left spread plenty of misinformation of their own and have a history of suppressing inconvenient facts. The Democrats colluded with Twitter's previous owners to remove factual journalism about President Biden's son's use of crack and prostitutes. Just this week, the government in this country refused to tell journalists how much had been spent furnishing luxury flats for illegal immigrants, saying that it's too sensitive to reveal. We shouldn't restrict freedom of speech. We need the freedom to be wrong so that we can have the freedom to be right. We don't achieve truth by letting petty bureaucrats decide what is and what isn't the truth. And the left should worry about the precedent that they are setting. If they censor right-wing politicians, what's to stop those right-wing politicians from censoring them when they're in power? I'm joined tonight by dating guru Kezia Noble and famous international playboy Andrew Eborn. How are you both doing?
Oh, I love to be a guru. It's cannot be a playboy guru. It's the perfect combination. It's lovely to be back with Kezia as well.
Yeah.
Absolute thrill.
Are you worried by the sort of increasing clampdowns on free speech that we're seeing across the world and in particular in this country?
I am. I'm very concerned about it because it seems to be targeted on like one group of people, people who have a problem with immigration. They're really being targeted right now. They're being clamped down on. And yet I hear people on the other side of the argument being allowed to spout all sorts of nonsense and real misinformation and not receive any kind of kickback at all. Yeah,
well, we've seen hoaxes spread by far-left organisations. We've also seen Alistair Campbell, considering Tony Blair is wading into the misinformation conversation. Alistair Campbell has spread a sort of far-left conspiracy theory that Trump somehow faked his ear being shot and has said, "Oh, look how amazingly it's a miracle that his ear grew back."
It was extraordinary. I'll tell you what, freedom of speech, our fundamental democratic right, is on life support. Yeah. All around the world, we had the CEO and founder of Telegram being arrested in France.
Durov.
Yeah, absolutely scandalous. He's been charged with that sort of side. Yeah. You've had Elon Musk having a pop where basically the EU tried to silence him before that brilliant bromance interview with Trump, where they talked about that sort of side. And you've also had him being shut down down in Brazil.
Yeah.
And if you look at that sort of thing, the worst thing, I had his dad on my show, Errol Musk, and we talked about this, and he said, well, Elon doesn't really, he just carries on, he's quite nonchalant about this, he's got enough customers.
Yeah.
But actually there are, I think it's 40 million customers in Brazil.
Yeah.
And what happens if they try to access their X account, they get fined up to $9,000 if they use a VPN. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that you'd see in China or, North Korea, this sort of autocratic state clamping down. Even if somebody just tries to access Twitter or X, then they get fined. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, but with Keir Starmer, this is Operation Warp Speed Destruction.
Yeah.
This is it. Look, the Tories used to kind of at least pretend. They used to pretend that they were doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Whereas Labour are just like, they're more transparent. It's just like, this is what we're doing. You're going to have no freedoms at some point to say anything unless it fits our narrative.
Yeah.
I mean, what happened to that? I think she was a Labour MP who made up, it got a lot of people into trouble and made up this story that right-wing rioters were throwing acid on Muslim women's faces.
Yeah, scandalous, absolutely scandalous.
What's happened to her?
Well, this was something that was shared by a Labour MP,
this is
Josh.
MP. This is not just some person on Twitter in their basement.
Absolutely.
This is an MP,
and it was also shared by
happened.
It was also shared by government advisors. The head of Hope Not Hate shared it. Who, obviously these people have got credibility. I think if
why isn't she locked up?
If a housewife has a bottle of wine too many and tweets some crazy stuff, nobody's looking at it and taking their cues from that. But if it's an MP, a Labour MP, or if it's government advisors, then that carries a lot more weight. And we did see people.
And the whole point is this justice should be blind.
Yeah.
And the reason there's a criticism of two-tier Keir is exactly that. You get go on a march or whatever it is. We're going to be arrested. You're going to be charged. One person's got up to 9 years, I think it was, sentence on that sort of basis. You go and steal something from a shop or whatever. Well, it's all right. You just carry on.
Yeah.
Nick a phone off somebody in the street. They don't even look at that sort of stuff. The problem we've got at the moment is they're now basically criminalising thought. And Yvette Cooper was saying just in the last few days exactly that sort of stuff. It may not be a crime, but if there's sort of hate speech along that sort of lines, we're going to clamp down on it. So on that sort of basis, it's really, as I say, freedom of speech is in a critical condition. We have to talk out about it.
And this thing about things that aren't crimes, because they use this euphemistic term, it's a non-crime hate incident. And it's almost worse than getting a conviction because it stays, it's recorded.
6 years,
So it stays on your record for 6 years. You haven't committed a crime. It's a non-crime, but it's still discoverable by HR departments who want to check you out for a job. So obviously, somebody who sees that, sees that you've got a non-crime hate incident for wrongthink, and you're not going to get the job. So it can really destroy people's lives and their ability to provide for their families.
That's been going on for quite some time, even under the Tory government. That was starting to happen. As I said, this is Operation Warp Speed. They're just putting it through quicker, and they're doing everything that the Tories wanted to do. It's the same outcome. It's just that this party's going to do it a lot faster.
Yeah.
And I think if Descartes was in Britain under Starmer, it would be, I think, therefore I am arrested. You work on that sort of basis. The worrying thing as well
People literally voted in Animal Farm.
Yeah, it is.
Literally.
George Orwell is like a documentary, isn't it? You work on that basis. What's crazy? It's like a little manual. This is what I should be doing. We'll silence everybody.
Speed Animal Farm.
Crazy. I am, and all animals are equal, especially that one. But what I love about it, not love, we should absolutely shout out about is they're now criminalising WhatsApp messages.
Yeah.
Now, they're supposed to be private conversations between people in little groups, and in those conversations are probably a lot darker. It's humour you wouldn't want to share in public and so on and so forth.
Oh, man, I'm in a group with Hugh Edwards, and let me tell you... obviously stuff that's actually criminal. If it's something, if it's criminal, Hugh Edwards' case, child porn, or if it's incitement to violence, I can understand that that needs to be criminalised. But some of the people have been convicted.
No, it's dark humour.
There was somebody convicted literally for dark humour. He was convicted for sharing these memes that weren't particularly offensive. They were just basically just saying, my town's going to have a lot of Asian people coming to it, which just seems to be a fact rather than it's a fact. But the judge said that it was grossly offensive, which is offence is such a subjective term. I wasn't offended by it.
It sounds like it's a fact to me. This is what's happening. If you're letting in millions a year of Asian guys, men, not women and children, then, your town or wherever you live is going to have more Asians, and it's just a fact.
And you're not even allowed to make a joke about it.
But he wasn't. It was actually like saying a fact. He wasn't even
Yeah.
saying,
Yeah.
I'm upset about this. It's like, this is just what's going to happen.
But there's two major cases. There's the Wayne Couzens case as well, and the officers there who were sharing all sorts of dark jokes,
Yeah.
and they clamped down on their systems. And the other one was with the primary school teacher who was basically making all sorts of inappropriate messages if they were in public, but they weren't in a closed group. You should see half the messages I get from Leo on WhatsApp. It's disgusting, terrible.
We need to bring in a new law.
Yes.
Anybody who leaks a WhatsApp
Yes.
group, that should be a hanging offence. We need to bring back capital punishment.
There you go.
You're going to be a little grass.
We're going to have and today's poll on GBNews. This is no, but it is worrying if they can look at your private messages.
Yeah.
And this is what happens. I work with a lot of journalists around the world who are really genuinely scared.
Yeah.
Ever since the CEO and founder of Telegram was arrested, they're saying they use this as an excuse, and they use terrorism laws as an excuse, because that means they can get all of your devices and they go on effectively like a fishing expedition to try and find information that they could then charge you with.
Right.
And that's the real concern, and that's why it's so important to call
Pity
it
they
out.
just weren't catching the real terrorists,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah,
There seems to actually like bomb, you know, places like Manchester Arena
Yeah.
and stuff. It's a pity that their focus wasn't on there rather than right-wing memes.
Yeah, there seems to be much more focus on, thoughts and hurty feelings than people making bombs or sharpening knives. It's
exactly.
terrifying. I read a headline in The Guardian this week that made me do a double take so hard I nearly got whiplash.
Was it spelt right?
Whiplash. it was spelled right. But the stuff it was saying, this is what it said. It said, racism, poverty, drink and social media. We still don't know why Britons rioted a month ago, and we need answers. Really? You have no idea why people rioted? You think that across the country, people suddenly got so racist that they rioted, but they've somehow become less racist since because they stopped rioting? Or you think it was booze that people got drunker than they've ever been before on a Tuesday, and this drunkenness made them riot? Or you think it was misinformation on social media that said the killings were committed by an Islamist asylum seeker? Of course, the mainstream media were quick to correct this, saying that Axel Muganwa Rudakabana, whose parents are Rwanda, was born in Britain, so he's completely British. I mean, yeah, he's probably the most British person of all time. If I was to pick the most British people of all time, I'd probably say Hugh Grant, the Queen, and Axel Muganwa Rudakabana. The left are completely blind to the fact that many people don't like to see children stabbed to death.
Yeah.
They're also blind to the fact that not everyone is delighted about our country having completely open borders, welcoming in 1.2 million new arrivals every year, many of them illegal, many of them from radically different cultures. The cosseted milquetoasts who read The Guardian won't experience it, but some of these arrivals don't integrate and instead commit crime, sexually exploit children, form parallel societies. Britain isn't a country anymore. It's a borderless economic zone where anyone is free to come and go as they please. And not everyone loves that. Now, I mean, I'm astounded that people on the left, they keep trying to find something to blame for the riots. They say it's misinformation on social media, it's racism, it's booze, it's, whatever it is, when the reality of the matter was, I think most people in Britain felt this absolute gut revulsion, this fury at children being killed. Yet again, it's like, how many mass killings of children are we supposed to put up with? Like you mentioned the Manchester Arena bomber a moment ago.
Oh, yes, and remember, don't look back in anger.
Yeah.
That person who started singing that song, no, we're angry.
Yeah.
I don't want to not look back in anger. I am angry about what's happening, and a lot of people are really angry about what's happening. Europe is starting to get angry, and nothing's getting done about it. Nothing. Look at Italy. They apparently got this right-wing government. She's done nothing.
She's done some stuff.
She's made the right noises. There are still thousands and thousands of migrants coming in every single day. I have friends in Cyprus. They said it's just full of Syrians.
But it's a complex.
It's not complex. You just need to have guards there on your borders, and you just say, no, you're not coming in. Just like they did in COVID, when healthy people weren't allowed to travel. They did it then, they can do it now.
Yeah, that's a fair point, actually.
No,
but they've got
it's not complicated.
They've got charities and NGOs that are funded from some dodgy, far-left sources that bring people from Libya to Italy. But Maloney has started turning them back, and we're seeing it across Europe. We're seeing, people are getting electing more right-wing parties because they see the mainstream parties aren't doing what they want.
Just like in France with Le Pen, it's getting thwarted all the time.
It's a massive issue around the world.
They want this to continue. They want mass immigration because they want to change our expectations. They know that they cannot carry on providing what the boomers had, OK? So they want to change our expectations. If you think about it, in the 1980s and even 1990s, somebody would just think, if I work hard, I'll have a house and I'll have a car and a dog and children. Now it's like, if I work hard, I'll have a shoebox that I rent in the middle of nowhere.
And
because the expectations have been lowered. This is not even a cultural issue. This is just the numbers.
And
don't ignore legal immigration.
Right. And you're absolutely right. As soon as times are tough, that's what happens. People pull up the drawbridge and they blame the other things. But just to go back on one of the points, there was the spread of misinformation. There was Channel 3 Now, and I investigated this. They only had like 3,000 followers on Twitter, but they spread the false report. And what happened, it's about the murder of the 3 little girls, which was abhorrent. And the families and the tragedy, they said, look, don't hijack our grief. To some of those people, there is no excuse for people to go and riot and take televisions away. That's got nothing to do with the murder of 3 little girls.
But there's no violence, and some of the stuff was absolutely reprehensible.
Abhorrent.
But the reason that people were angry, I think, is very obvious, and I cannot believe the Guardian and other people on the left are willfully ignoring it.
They are trolling us. They are trolling us, the Guardian, saying, "Oh, what was this? It must have been booze." No, this is something that's so much deeper. We're watching our country being ruined, and this is an awful thing that happened. The riots went way too far. We all know that. But just listen to the root cause of where it's coming from.
Absolutely. Well, that's the serious section out of the way.
It's a comedy show, this, isn't it? That's the laugh.
I'd love it to be a comedy show, but with the news that we get, we can't make it a comedy show.